Welcome back. In today's video, we are going to discuss Dune Adventures in the Imperium skill tests. Dune Adventures in the Imperium uses a straightforward skill check system that will apply to most, if not all, of your conflicts, including combat and skill challenges. Skill checks in Dune 2D20 is a back and forth between the GM and the players. The GM will set the scene and any difficulty of the rolls, while the players will declare their actions, their motivations, and their drives, as well as if they want to use any resource points like momentum or determination. To get a better idea of how the skill tests work, we're going to use an in-game example that involves two players and the GM. The first thing that will happen before the skill test occurs is that the GM will set the scene for the players. In our example, our smuggler Jace finds himself trying to help Dr. Leora escape one of Emperor Shaddam's Imperial fleet vehicles. Hot on the pair's heels is two of the Emperor's most feared soldiers, the Sardaukar. Jace and Dr. Leora have made their way to the shuttle bay. Unfortunately, the only vehicle left appears to be inoperable. Making matters worse, red lights begin to flash and alarms begin to sound. Now that the GM has set the scene, the players declare their actions. After completing diagnostics, Dr. Leora decides to repair the vehicle. Jace will attempt to bar the door and then assist Dr. Leora in her repairs. It's now time for the GM to determine the difficulty setting. When setting the difficulty, the GM needs to be concerned with four main issues. First are the traits. Scene traits are any piece of the scene that would have an impact on the actions the players are currently taking. If a player is attempting to climb a flat surface and the scene involves rain, then a scene trait of the rain would make that test more difficult. Once the players have declared their action, the GM will decide which skill is appropriate to use. We won't go into a full breakdown of the skills and drives in this video, but in the appendix there is a list of each skill and drive and a brief description of when to use each one. The third item that GMs will need to consider is whether or not they plan to use any of their threat or resource. Threat is the GM version of momentum and can be used to increase the difficulty, buy dice for NPCs, or change the traits of the scene. The last thing the GM will need to consider, but won't have direct impact on the difficulty of this particular roll, is the risk involved of this player action. Risk ranges from normal to treacherous on a scale of 1 through 5, and it determines on what roll values a complication is incurred by the players. The risk level won't come into play until after the roll has been made and success has been determined. However, the players may want to know this value ahead of time to determine how likely it is that they incur a complication. However, you may choose as a GM to play with a blind risk, where the players do not know on what rolls they will incur a complication. So going back to our scene, we will go through each item based on our example. Before the difficulty can be calculated or any modifications are added, the GM must determine what the base difficulty level would be. Based on Dr. Leora's decision to try and repair the vehicle before the Sardaukar break into the shuttle bay, the GM has determined that this would be a difficult repair in a hurry. Therefore, they've assigned the daunting difficulty, a base difficulty of 3. For the repair actions, the GM has selected the Understand skill to be used by Dr. Leora. Due to the scene description, the GM has also determined that the alarm going off would be a distraction to the repair and thus be a difficulty of +1 due to the traits of the scene. To increase the intensity of the scene, the GM has also decided to increase the difficulty by 1 using threat. The GM notes, just as Dr. Leora begins to run her diagnostics for repair, the shuttle bay doors begin to close, threatening to permanently lock them inside the ship. Based on the actions that are being taken by the players, the GM decides that the risk value is normal, and therefore a complication will only be incurred on the roll of a 20. Calculating the total difficulty, including the base difficulty of 3, the threat of +1, and the trait of +1, the total difficulty is 5. This means Dr. Leora will need 5 successes to complete her task. With the difficulty set, the players now determine what their motivations are for completing this task, including which drives and statements they will choose to use. Looking at Dr. Leora's character sheet, you can see that she has the science will solve the problem statement underneath the truth drive. She has decided that this will be the most applicable statement and drive for this particular action. The GM agrees with Dr. Leora that this statement would apply, and therefore there is no mismatch or conflict in the statements for this particular task. So based on the skill, understand, that the GM chose, and the drive, truth, that Dr. Leora chose, the total success value can be calculated as 14. This is the value that Dr. Leora must roll equal to or under in order to achieve a success. Because the GM has chosen the understand skill, Dr. Leora notes that she also has an applicable focus, the deductive reasoning. Dr. Leora chooses to apply this focus of deductive reasoning to the roll. She notes that using deductive reasoning will help her to better complete her task in a much more efficient way. Looking at the daunting task in front of her, Dr. Leora decides to spend 3 momentum points in order to buy 2 additional dice. Added together with the 2 base dice that is used for every skill check, and this will give Dr. Leora a total dice pool of 4. Because the difficulty of the task is 5, and the total dice pool that Dr. Leora will roll is 4, it would appear as if the task is not achievable. However, because Dr. Leora has chosen to use her deductive reasoning focus, any success she rolls that is equal to or under her skill value will count as 2 total successes. Because she has a total understand of 7, that means any roll of 7 or less will count as 2 successes. Additionally, Jace has chosen to assist with this task. The assist action allows any player who is helping on a skill test to roll 1d20. Should Jace succeed using the understand skill and any drive that he chooses to use, then he will also add 1 success to the pool. With the possibility of a critical success adding 2 successes and Jace assisting and possibly adding an additional success, then a dice pool of 4 makes this task achievable. All that's left is to roll. With her dice pool of 4, Dr. Leora rolls a 14, a 7, a 10, and a 16. Jace rolls an 18. So looking at the total values, 14, 7, and 10 are all equal to or under the success value of 14, and therefore count as successes for Dr. Leora. In addition, because 7 is equal to her understand skill, and she has applied her deductive reasoning focus, her success of a 7 will count as 2 successes, giving her a total of 4 successes. Looking at Jace's character sheet, he has also decided to use the truth drive for this role. With an understand of 5 and a truth of 5, Jace's success value would be a 10, and therefore an 18 fails. Combining Dr. Leora's 4 successes with Jace's 0 successes, the team fails to meet the 5 successes needed to reach the difficulty, and ultimately, the task fails. As Jace and Leora work quickly to try and repair the vehicle, they are unable to do so before the Sardaukar break through the door. So in the next video, we explore how skill tests are used in combat, as well as watch as Jace and Dr. Leora experience their first complication.